Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Another disgusting robbery in the heavyweight division. I'm absolutely livid. Kamili Sokolowski robbed David Adeleye, given a gift decision 58-57. This was on a Frank Warren show in the UK. So Sokolowski, he deserved to win. He outboxed, he outlanded, he outthought David Adeleye, the young British prospect who advanced to 6-0 on the back of this effort, but Adeleye in this fight was often found wanting. He was bereft of ideas, pushed onto the back foot, just unable to really land much of note. There was a good sort of couple of shots later in the fight, but for the most part, Kamili Sokolowski was the one who was bringing the effective pressure. He was the one landing the more shots. Sometimes it wasn't necessarily the heavier shots, but there was just more shots landing. He was the one who was outboxing, outthinking, outdoing everything pretty much against David Adeleye, who it's clear he's a talented fighter, but he's still too raw. Heading into this fight, this was a couple of rungs above where he's been fighting, and it showed. Sokolowski is a tough, gritty, durable journeyman who does actually have some good technique, good boxing ability, but if you're good enough, if you're really going places in the heavyweight division, you handle him. If that's by decision, it doesn't matter, you outclass him. And previously we've seen a lot of top talent in the heavyweight division do that. You've had Victor Vikhurst more recently, Vladislav Serenko, even a guy in Nathan Gorman. He was actually had an injured hand in his fight with Sokolowski, easily outclassed Sokolowski in their fight. Adeleye has been calling out Nathan Gorman, but on the face of that, it looks a little bit silly after this performance. But right from the outset, Adeleye was allowing himself to be pushed back. He was working off the back foot. All he was doing was looking for a right-hand counter. You could see that at home. I could see that at home. Kamili Sokolowski could see that in the ring. That was pretty much all he was bringing for the first 3 or 4 rounds. The jab was just completely non-existent, looking for one punch, one perfect shot to end the night. And it didn't come. And after 4 rounds, it was conceivably 4-0 to Kamili Sokolowski, who was outworking, outthinking, out everything David Adeleye. I mean, there were 1 or 2 close rounds in there, but after round, I think 4, certainly I thought that David Adeleye was in trouble. The commentators thought that he was in trouble. A lot of people online thought that David Adeleye was in trouble. He needed to actually start working that jab, setting his shots up, and it never really sort of came. There was sort of little flurries, round 5, round 6, and I think you can argue that he won the final round probably quite clearly, and round 5, you can argue that for him as well. But to get to 58-57 is basically giving him every benefit of the doubt and discounting Kamili Sokolowski, who really did do good work in there. His jab was good. He was measuring Adeleye with it. He was using it as sort of a blinding tactic as well to sort of stop Adeleye sort of coming forward. And Adeleye was just content to sit back and waiting and watching and not really doing too much. And you had a lot of shots throughout the whole fight where Sokolowski was actually clipping and catching Adeleye with some nice right hands. There was a couple of good combinations, a right hand and a left hook. That was, I think, in round 2. But you sort of got the sense David Adeleye is just not doing enough. The experience gap showed. Sokolowski might only have the 10 wins and now he's got 22 losses. But he was the one who was the boss in there, the ring general. He was dictating the pace and the terms of this fight, not David Adeleye. And, for a guy who was 5-0 heading into this, he looked it. He is a young guy, 23, 24 years old. But this was a step too far. It really was. So this was almost disaster and should have been disaster. And I can't impress enough that this is disgusting, the scoring, because Sokolowski deserved to win that fight. He really did. At worst, it should have been a draw for him. You have to really go looking for every single thing to give it in favour of David Adeleye. And it was a referee score. I mean, some people will say, look, he was the third man in the ring there. You can't doubt him. But actually, after what I saw, what actually transpired, yes. And I have to call into question that scorecard by the referee. I do think it was a disgusting score. And, the unbeaten guy who they believe is going to do something and go somewhere in the heavyweight division, he gets the rub of the green here. Surprise, surprise. And it has to be said, you cannot, if you're the away fighter, you cannot expect to get a decision in the UK now. It just almost seems impossible. The British Boxing Board of Control needs to look at itself, its judging, but also the image from the outside. It's not a good look. It's every weekend almost that there's a shocker of a decision, and this was another one. And you have to credit Sokolowski. It was a good game plan. He forced Adeleye back. He tried to use his strength and tried to outmuscle Adeleye in the clinch. He was pushing him against the ropes, roughing him up, sometimes using his head a little bit too. The referee did actually have to get involved and say, look, stop, leaning in with your head. That was sort of through the mid-rounds of the 6-rounder. But you have to say, Adeleye was guilty of just looking for a counter and almost nothing else, almost exclusively just looking for that one shot, and it never really came. You got to say his back foot game is lacking. It really is. The only thing that we saw was he was able to back up and cock that right hand. And that was about it, because he wasn't really doing any work on the back foot of note. The jab was woefully missing, and you could hear his corner instructing him every single round. Use the jab. You have to actually use the jab here to set up your shots. They were imploring him, and he was just either ignoring the instruction or unable to implement it. And if he was unable to implement it, that's a serious concern. But after the fight, he seemed to think that he'd won that and comfortably, and that his corner had told him that he wasn't losing the fight. It sort of seemed to be towards later in the fight, if you were listening in between the rounds, there was a little bit of panic in Adelaide's voice. It was either the end of round 4 or round 5. But seemingly in the post-fight, making out that there was nothing really to see here. But, he said that it was a good learning fight, that he should be disappointed with his performance and he'll go back to the drawing board. I guess that's a good attitude to have, because he says he believes he is one of the best in the country. But, he was ignoring the instruction, no jab, very one-dimensional. And Marcus McDonnell, who was the referee, uppercut for him. Uppercut yourself, Marcus McDonnell, because that was disgraceful. For Sokolowski, another very good effort. He is a road warrior. And based on this, Adeleye needs, a couple more years of development before he sort of reaches any real level. I think that much is clear. He needs a lot more work. Other prospects that we've seen Kamili Sokolowski in with more recently have handled him much better than David Adeleye. Vladislav Serenko, Victor Vikhurst, Ali Aaron Demirezhin, Zan Kosobutsky. These are in the past sort of 18 months or so. None of them had the same sort of issues that Adeleye had. And they are probably there or thereabouts in the sort of top 5 to 15 of prospects. I mean, on the strength of that, Adeleye probably isn't in that mix at the moment. He probably is not nearly as far along as people thought. We knew he was raw, but raw potential can be molded. So we'll have to reserve judgment completely. But a lot to work on. Didn't enjoy that performance, and Adeleye, he can count himself lucky. I really feel for Kamili Sokolowski, because that was disgusting. But what did you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.